Music is a form of communication, so it's natural to want other people to hear and enjoy your work. But how do you build a fan base if you're literally starting from scratch? This is a tricky question to answer because although I know what's worked for me, there's a lot of luck and randomness to how people succeed in this particular goal. So it can be hard to come up with advice that'll actually work for everyone. But I've tried my best to use my experience and the stories of other successful musicians I've met over the years to come up with solid advice that I believe will increase anyone's chances of reaching an audience. Now, I'm about to tell you a list of the strategies and concepts I'll be covering in this video, and as you hear them, I want you to try and notice how many of them make you uncomfortable or annoyed. Because the odds are you've heard people say a lot of this stuff before, and this kind of advice can come across as unrealistic or even worse, condescending. But I'm going to do my best to spell out exactly how this stuff can work for you, knowing that at times it can feel overwhelming. Just try to keep an open mind, even if things get a little weird. In order to build a passionate following from scratch, and the key word here is passionate, you need to make music that could be someone's favorite music, a recognizable visual style, an artistic life outside of social media, collaborations with artists with a similar sized following, a release schedule, the ability to perform your music as a solo act, and therapy, to be honest, or at least activities outside of your work and art life that can help you stay grounded as you engage in this psychologically treacherous process. It is not easy for a lot of reasons. Please keep in mind that this list of strategies is what I believe will give you the best chance at getting a fan base, but it isn't necessarily what I wish we had to do to get our music heard. Part 1. Make music that could be someone's favorite music. Think about your favorite musicians, the artists who inspire you the most. What did they make that made you fall in love with their work? Was it an album, a concert, a live in studio recording, a YouTube video? At some point, you found their work and it was so special and so well presented that you got really curious and excited to hear more, and then it moved you. So that means they made something that was both super compelling and publicly available. And this might seem absurdly simple. So simple, but if you put your time and energy into making something super compelling and then release it publicly, you're on the right track to getting an audience. In order to make your music super compelling, you're going to need a lot of experience making music. And of course, there's exceptions to this. There's plenty of people who just seem to naturally make great music their first try. But in general, you want to think of yourself as a music researcher. The goal in the short term isn't to make amazing music, let alone someone's favorite music, but rather to explore musical possibilities and continuously improve your music. Pretty much my whole channel is dedicated to this process. This is my research. And throughout your musical journey, you need to continue your research. You can learn techniques on an instrument, try a new style of mixing, learn to sing, learn to scream, take lessons, just keep getting more experienced at music. To improve at making original music for release, the best strategy is to have a quantity to quality workflow where you focus on making a large quantity of song demos or musical snippets for a period, and then zoom in on one of those songs and take it as far as you can. Work on the nuances of the mix and production and just try to make the song a little better than the last one from your subjective point of view. You repeat this process of writing a ton of demo songs and then refining one of them, and you should find that your next round of demos are a lot more focused and closer to being finished than the previous round of demos. And most importantly, you will hone a style and artistic voice. Having a personal and distinct artistic voice means that when you show your music to people, some of them will say, "This music isn't for me." And that's because it is something. It has a specific and strong vibe or identity. See, the goal is not to write music that everyone will like, it's to write music that some people will love. As you're growing and learning and experimenting, you must also practice releasing your music. The practice of releasing your songs and then finding out what people think of them is a crucial step if you're trying to build an audience. Of course, but you might notice a potential paradox here. If you have no followers, how can you find out what people think of your music when you release it? Is there any value in going through the whole album writing, recording, mixing, and distributing process if there's no one who wants to hear your music when it's done? You might expect me to say yes. And I will say yes, but I know that it's kind of frustrating to hear me say yes. So let me explain my thinking here. Basically, to state the obvious, If no one is interested in your music and you release music, there is a chance someone could find your music. And if you don't release music, there is no chance someone will find your music. So there's that important detail. But we don't need to just leave it there. There are actual things you can do after you release music to get people to listen to it. One of the best ways to get people to find your music is to record high-quality live performances of the music. I know this doesn't work as easily for electronic genres, but there's always a way to make a live version of what you do. When people see a live performance from a random stranger, there is potential for an empathetic connection to emerge. It is exciting and refreshing to see an unknown artist performing wonderful music super well. When I was in the band Bent Knee, we would always film a live in-studio version of our albums, and a lot of people got more excited about our band and interested in going to our shows from those videos than from the albums themselves, because it's easier to connect with the music when you're watching people play it. And since many live venues don't sound that good, the balance and precision you get from recording and filming a performance in a studio offers people a chance to get more familiar with all the little details they might miss seeing you play at a standard venue or even when listening to the album. Have you ever found a band through NPR's Tiny Desk, for instance, or Audio Tree? Many people find their favorite artists that way. They get really excited about the Tiny Desk and then they dive into the rest of their work. To offer a concrete example of how all this stuff can come together, I think if you write 20 songs, pick your favorite 3, record and mix them as best you can, release them as singles or an EP, and then film yourself playing them live, post the videos to YouTube, you will likely get some people to be interested in your music. And you will likely get some feedback that will show you how your music is coming across. What do people like about it? This takes a lot of time and effort, but it doesn't have to cost a lot. As long as your writing, recording, mixing, and performing skills keep improving, eventually this process will result in you having what it takes to make someone's favorite music. By the way, live and studio videos can be very expensive to make, but they are a great investment. They work much better, in my experience, than putting ads on Facebook or Google or something. So if you have any promo budget at all, that's a really good place to put your money. Just make some great live and studio stuff. But if you don't have a budget, you can just film yourself playing your songs or even singing the backing tracks with a mic in hand, as long as the audio sounds good. If the audio sounds good, the video doesn't have to be amazing. And I recommend putting your head here if you're shooting horizontal, and here if you're shooting vertical. And lighting's really important, and one good way to get a nice light is to use the sun. So film next to a window while the sun is coming through it. Check out Frank Watkinson for a good example of how you can use simple equipment to make a really compelling performance video. And when you're planning these performance videos, ask yourself, what could I do to bring out the vibe of my music with this live video? Maybe perform in a river or at a giant abandoned parking lot. A strong, simple concept can go a long way and help you establish a visual language for your music. Part 2. Have a recognizable visual style. Music usually comes with visuals. We've got album art, music videos, merch designs, band photos, show posters, and now with streaming services we got these short video loops. Then there's the whole Instagram, TikTok, YouTube paradigm. More than ever, people are finding music with their eyes first. With all the visual art a musician needs, it seems like it would be too expensive to hire artists to do everything, so we have to learn to create a visual language for our music that we can implement ourselves. That doesn't mean we have to become generally amazing visual artists, we just have to go in some aesthetic direction and see where it leads. For example, YouTube thumbnails are visual art. Lots of YouTubers who aren't visual artists find ways to make the thumbnails for their channels a compelling piece of their story nonetheless. Just to get your ideas going, some easy ways to make visual art that is both personal and interesting looking can include taking photographs in vibey locations or with old or weird cameras, taking elements from a stock image library and creating collage art by mashing them together, combining materials in an unconventional way like pouring paint all over rocks, making childish abstract drawings and then scanning them into a computer and scribbling other childish abstract drawings on top of them in a paint program, or using a projector to put colors on yourself while you're singing, or learning like Blender or some free open source software and just messing around. I do have a Blender course called Blender for Musicians if you want to get started with that. But none of these methods require you to have amazing drawing skills or a strong sense of design or a big budget. And all of these approaches are pretty fast. Whatever visual art comes out of you most easily and interests you is probably going to be a good thing to follow. But something that will help you make any of these ideas really hit home is if you learn a little bit about composition. Look up the rule of thirds and some tutorials on visual art composition, and you'll get a lot better at making your images just feel good. A lot of visual art composition is very simple. Like, you can just stick a giant circle in the middle of your image and it'll look good. Have you ever noticed how many album covers are just big circles? As you develop your visual style, your identity as an artist will become clearer to other people and help a potential audience member find and then connect with your work. The whole point of having an audience is to experience a profound connection. And although there is a lot of opportunity for connection online, it's important to get involved in an in-person musical community as well. Part 3. Have an artistic life outside of social media. Playing my songs for an enthusiastic, attentive crowd of 30 people in a nice, cozy apartment feels so much more rewarding than getting 1 million views on an Instagram reel and seeing the same comments over and over again. It's harder to imagine how 1 million people felt when they heard a song on a short-form social media clip than it is when you share it with someone in person. Making music with and for people in the real world definitely comes with its own set of challenges, but the payoff for putting in the work to be involved in a local arts community is enormous. When I lived in Boston, I knew a lot of people and would go to my friends' shows, jams, and birthday parties. I never had to try to get involved in the arts community. It was just happening. But then I moved to a small suburb in a different state and suddenly found myself isolated with no artistic community or friends nearby. For the first time in my life, it was completely up to me to find a scene to be a part of. And for the first year or so of living here, I pretty much stayed home. I got super lonely and artistically blocked up. And it really wasn't until after starting therapy for a few months that I got the tools and perspective I needed to go out and find jam sessions, art gallery shows, community music events, local concerts, volunteering and mentorship opportunities. It's wild that I did all this stuff. And to describe the mental shift that enabled me to start going out and finding events, I want to talk about networking. Networking is a word that can make people uncomfortable. When a guy like me goes on YouTube making a self-help video and saying, "You need to network," it's kind of like when someone tells you, "Just be confident," or "Just relax." It's much easier to tell someone to network than it is to go out there and meet people. Also, a lot of people don't like the idea of networking in the first place because it feels disingenuous to go to random shows you wouldn't otherwise go to just to meet people who can help you with your career. You don't want to feel like a mosquito looking around the room at all these sacks full of blood trying to find the most powerful person to feed on. So instead of thinking of networking as going out to find useful people who can help your career, let's think of it as going out to find people who might be looking for you but don't know it yet. Think about what you have to offer other people and how you might be able to use your gifts to lift other people up. How can you contribute to the local community? Networking is also a form of research to help you understand your community. Are there any art galleries you didn't know about? Events going on that might be cool? Art or music-related nonprofits you could volunteer at? Are there music clubs? Are there local bands that you'd actually like to listen to? Open jam sessions. As you learn about all the separate little artistic communities in your area, think about how you could help connect them to each other, or get involved, or make your own event. How can you make the local scene a little bit better? One little example of doing local research could be like, if a national band you like ever comes to your town, check out what other shows are coming up at that same venue, and keep an eye out for the local bands that may be opening or hosting shows at that venue, and then just listen to their music and see if you like them. You might find some amazing local artists this way. You don't have to just do music stuff either. There's a lot to learn from any art form, and usually visual artists need music people for projects, so there's a lot of potential collaboration that can happen in non-music spaces as well. Growing your connection with your local art scene will become more and more important as you continue to grow online because it will ground you in reality and help you feel whole. But there are plenty of meaningful connections to be made online as well. Part 4. Collaborate with artists with a similar sized following. Have you ever heard an album or a song that completely changed your relationship with music? For me, Say It Ain't So by Weezer was one of those songs. I was 14 when I heard it, and it basically became my personality for a few years. And I can't help but wonder, how many songs are out there that I will never hear from artists I've never heard of that could potentially change my life again? It's possible that the greatest song of all time was written last week by an unknown artist in a tiny little town and won't even be posted on streaming services. The point here is that there are probably thousands of amazing artists who also have no following, but have so much to offer in terms of creativity and expression. And if you can find one of those people to collaborate with, you can learn so much faster, and you could help each other gain perspective and accountability for doing the work necessary to get your music out there. The best people to collaborate with are people who are good at something you are not good at. All musicians have strengths and weaknesses, and if you can find someone whose strengths are your weaknesses and vice versa, and start collaborating together, you will become incredibly powerful. When I was in the band Bent Knee, everyone in that band was much better than me at something, and I learned so much about songwriting, performance, and production so quickly just from being in the same room as them. You know, the most important thing I've learned from collaborations is that there are many ways to make something good. I'd often have an idea in my head and I was like, this idea is the best idea and I need to fight for it. And then I'd hear 5 other ideas that were equally good coming from the other band members, and I would be humbled. Here I was thinking I had the best idea, but really it was just another good idea. The same thing applies to promoting music. Getting ideas from collaborators on how to actually get the music out there will make the process of promoting the work a lot more enjoyable and creative. In order to find a good collaborator, it's important to just start simple. Offer a low-stakes, low-effort collab and see if you can do something easy together. For example, you could be like, send me 15 seconds of music and I'll turn it into a minute of music and we'll see what that's like. Or like, want to have a song challenge where I spend 30 minutes writing a song, you spend 30 minutes writing a song, then we swap songs and finish each other's songs for another 30 minutes? Just fun, quick stuff like that. Then if it's feeling good, you can start working on something a bit more elaborate, like an EP. As you produce more high-quality work, it'll be easier to find people who want to collaborate with you. And as you and your collaborators build an audience, a scene will emerge around your work. Part 5. Have a release schedule. I try to make at least one album each year, and usually I book recording time before I even have any songs written. This is because it's hard to prioritize making my own music while I'm working hard on making enough money and keeping my life together. The best reason to keep a release schedule going is to keep yourself on track, creating and releasing music even when your life gets super busy. And of course, as we all know, consistently releasing stuff helps build a following. Part 6. Be able to perform your songs by yourself. It's good to be able to perform your music by yourself because it allows you the freedom to play any gig that comes your way without needing to hire anyone else to play with you or necessarily rely on other people to have the time to play shows. Of course, it's great to find other people to perform with, but it's hugely helpful to be able to do it all on your own as well. Additionally, performing solo is so easy to control in terms of volume and mix quality that you can find unconventional venues and settings to play at, like living rooms and libraries, community centers, restaurants, farmers markets, backyards. They're all good places for a solo artist to perform, as long as there's someone there to listen. Part 7. Therapy. It sucks to want to be popular. It makes kids miserable in school, and then it makes adults miserable at work and in the rest of their lives. And there are a lot of ways to suffer psychologically from pursuing any kind of popularity. Trying to get an audience for your music comes from a good place, the desire to connect through art. But it almost always becomes a game of numbers where you're just counting up your likes and your views and your comments. Pretty much anyone who posts on social media has experienced the toxic addiction of making your social media numbers go up at this point. And many people refrain from promoting their music in the first place because they see this danger. You will need help from other people to stay grounded in the pursuit of getting your music heard. I've benefited from therapy and having other artists to talk to about this stuff, and I strongly recommend taking a proactive approach to taking care of your mental health. Try to prevent burnout as best you can. Besides the obvious things like eating well, not looking at your phone, and exercising, I have 2 main suggestions for how to keep your brain intact. First of all, if you have one person listening to your music, don't say, "No one is listening to my music." Instead say, one person is listening to my music. This is so important once you start having some followers. Do not keep rounding the number of audience members down to 0 in your head. Otherwise, when you get 100 plays on a song, suddenly when you get 10 plays, it'll feel like 0. And when you get 1,000 plays on a song, suddenly 100 will feel like 0. And when you get 10,000 plays on a song, you'll feel like 1,000 plays is a big disappointment. We must not endlessly pursue growth here. There are humans listening to your music. Try to imagine them driving in their cars, singing along to your lyrics. This is hard to do, by the way, and I mess it up all the time. My second big suggestion comes from one of my favorite YouTubers in the Blender art space, Curtis Holt, who recommends you think of yourself as two people in one. You are an artist and a reporter. The artist makes stuff, and the reporter tells people about it. The artist can do whatever it wants, can follow any inspiration, and the reporter must find ways to let other people see what the artist has done. But the reporter cannot tell the artist what to do. Both the artist and the reporter have to be very creative, but the reporter must also be efficient so that the reporting doesn't interfere with the artist. I find this perspective to be liberating because it basically means I can make any music I want, and then I just have to find clever ways to talk about what I did in a YouTube video or something like that. The reporter in me must cleverly find ways to connect all of the artist's interests into some releasable thing that helps people engage further with the art. If you want to learn more about this concept, check out Curtis's video in the description. It's really helpful. So to sum it all up, release great music and vibey visuals to go with it, film yourself performing the music, get involved in the local arts community, find collaborators, get a schedule going for your releases, and proactively protect your mental health. None of this is easy, and that is a lot of stuff. But people like you and me, we feel so driven to share our art that we've just got to give it a try. Please ask me any questions you might have about this stuff in the comments. I'll probably do a Q&A video in the future about this. I've made a bunch of courses to help with all this stuff. Like, you can check out my course Blender for Musicians if you want to learn to make 3D art for your music, or you can check out my course Getting Songs Done if you need help turning your ideas into full songs. And my course Making Music for Yourself helps you if you need a break from pursuing an audience and are looking to get a deeper connection with your musical process outside of this constant chase for attention. So I hope this was helpful and that you have a great time. Till next time.